Happening now. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 368 on February 4th, 2026. My name is Jason Neiffer. I am the Executive Director of Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana State Virtual School and statewide digital learning super organization located on the beautiful University of Montana campus right here in fabulous Western Montana, the city of Missoula. And joining me tonight, as always, weirdly enough, in colder weather than it currently is in Montana. Good evening, Dr. Wesley Fryer joins us tonight from Charlotte, North Carolina. How are you, sir?
Good evening, Jason. I am noticing, though, that you have the triple I bar in the subtitle. So I don't know, that may be signaling your higher AI geek quotient, I think, maybe, or something. But yes, like I am a media literacy and STEM middle school teacher here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we have had a real bout of winter weather. 2 weekends ago, we had an ice storm, which was a bit of a narrow miss. If you saw Oxford, Mississippi or Nashville, Tennessee, that got decimated by freezing rain. We were fortunate to get mostly sleet. So we had about a third to a half inch of sleet, but things melted off. We only had 1 day out of school, but then 11 inches of snow last weekend. It snowed like all day on Saturday. And that tied the record from 1880 for the third highest snowfall in a 24-hour period here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So tonight it is misting and getting down to 32, and snow is in the forecast. So, Jason, I don't know what y'all Great White North folks are sending our way, but apparently, the weather, it's a changing. So I got my sleeping bag today, going to keep me cozy.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, I will say that it's clearly warmer here, but I'm kind of a multiple blanket kind of guy with windows open too, I might add. So it's funny, my grandparents sleep with a window open every day of their lives and live ripe old ages. And so I do open up the window in the wintertime too. But I don't think we're here to talk about blankets.
We do have to recognize Peggy George, though, in the house. And it's only 85 in Phoenix today. So, boy, Peggy, I'm a little jealous of your shorts weather. But no, you're right, Jason. We are going to talk about some other stuff. And the rumor is we're going to talk about AI a little bit. And if you're not subscribed to the Frontier Learning Lab on Substack, I'm just going to drop that link in right now. I'm just going to encourage you to drop everything and subscribe, because Caitlin and Jason and their team are just sharing great stuff. And I learned about OpenClaw because of their posts. So AI topics tonight: AI literacy, propaganda, Claude Anthropic, OpenClaw, Google. We got some surveillance articles, some media literacy links, the miscellaneous category, and then our favorite geek of the week. That's the plan, I think.
Yeah, let's do it. Actually, Dr. Fryer, I really enjoyed the extra categories you had tonight, the articles there. Let's start there and see if the AI vortex sucks us in for yet another week.
Okay. Well, hey, let's just go to the media literacy category, because I frequently enjoy, as you recommend a book, recommend a podcast, and this is one of the most I can speak the English language tonight. It's a podcast that's probably going to become required reading the next time I teach a Conspiracies and Culture Wars mini course, or if I end up, doing a book. Angry Planet is one of my favorite podcasts, and this is their episode from January 30th called "Online Culture is the Whole Culture." And I have been I've been engaged in a project that we've called Conspiracies and Culture Wars since 2019. And my buddy Brian up in Chicagoland was a person who kind of started me on this path and this journey. It was with Brian Turnbaugh with a podcast. It was a Relay FM podcast. But what is up with troll culture? What is up with the way, what's going on with these crazy spaces of 4chan and the wild west of the web? And we're just seeing a lot of that gaming culture go mainstream. So if you don't know today why the Secretary of Defense, and yes, I will still call him the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has a Crusader tattoo on his body, it's because of gaming culture. And this podcast will give you some insight into it. And so I think it's really important for us to try and understand what's happening in the media environment. AI is a huge part of that, but I really, really enjoy this Angry Planet podcast. They have this, in this case, they've got a PhD candidate whose name is Michael Centers at Virginia Tech. And he is in the process of writing his dissertation about, basically how Twitter has become real life. It's not just this alternative reality. And I will do a shout out, Jason. I don't know if it's still happening, but the Moodle Moot of Montana was great a few years ago when I got to virtually participate. And one of the things that was cool was it brought together such a diverse group of folks, including some people who are working on, researching and countering extremist groups online and, doing online learning for a national security constituency. And it was just, it's super interesting to have chances to visit with folks that you have things in common, but you don't bump into each other in the teacher's lounge on a daily basis. Let's just say that. So is the Moodle Moot still alive and well?
Yeah, it is. In fact, I was the keynote last summer at the event, and it's actually, I'm very excited because I give the presentation I gave there for the first time in a couple weeks, or first time since then in a couple weeks at NCCE.
But it's the Mountain Moot. I said it wrong.
Yes,
yeah. So
correct.
if don't, so please Google Mountain Moot. It's mountainmoot.com. There's the link. It's coming again. Yes, July 8th through 10.
Yep.
2026.
Yeah, so. And in fact, I need to contact Dan and his crew because I think we're gonna try to take a larger role there this summer. But really a great event, and I learn a lot there too. It attracts a really interesting crowd of people that I think are really on the good edge of things. So
absolutely. Let me do another one that's just kind of off the wall. This is under the miscellaneous category. It's nice to have something that's a little bit different in the news feed. So this one comes to us from Alaska. Some, again, university folk have put some collar cams on some grizzlies in Alaska, on Alaska's North Slope. And so they have learned things about what the grizzlies eat and what they do. And you can see some of their camera footage brought to you with the magic of technology and probably good batteries, and also fish and wildlife folks that can basically dart and tag grizzly bears because they're not sending it via Wi-Fi or satellite. They're like saving it to a local drive. But anyway, I haven't shown this one to my students, but animals, by the way, are one of the things that are always interesting to students, including middle schoolers. And anyway, I think this is a very interesting use of tech, and there's interesting research. And no, we don't usually talk about grizzly bears and polar bears on the show, but there you go. There's a, bit of an unusual miscellaneous. Anything else outside the AI category that caught your eye you want me to do?
Let's talk about the local TV and radio at Crossroads.
All right. So Peter Vogel is somebody that I think I've been connected to for a long time, and now primarily through Facebook. And he is a ham radio guy. He is, I don't know exactly what his educational role is, but he's one of these people I've been connected to. And like tonight, I don't know if you are aware, but we've had some large solar flares that have caused some issues, and there's 2 different waves. I was learning about solar weather today from him as a result of Facebook. But this is an article that he actually wrote on January 28th, or it was published on the 28th, in a Canadian publication called the BC Catholic. And it says local TV and radio at a crossroads. And it is the story of how Canada, and this is true here in the United States as well, has really been struggling to maintain some of its legacy media, to include radio stations, AM radio, FM radio. I had heard an article in the last year or so talking about some car manufacturers trying to pull radios out of their cars Peter confirmed that evidently Tesla has done that. Like everything is internet based and streaming in a Tesla. You don't have the dial that you can just dial up, but it is at a crossroads because of a lot of things. The fact that advertising is so different, the internet, we've got, classified ads aren't what they used to be, and advertising on radio is not what it was either because the readership isn't there. Anyway, it's an article about the struggles that they're having. And I'll just say on a personal note, my father, who may or may not be one of our live viewers right now, is up in Manhattan, Kansas. And, he listens maybe daily, just every week, multiple times to his local KMAN radio station. And when I visit, I do too. And it's great. And they've got lots of local news. And I really think that local news is important. And it's something we should focus on. And this article talks a little bit about, is the government going to step in? What's going to happen to these channels? I don't know if I've talked about it on the show, but my grandfather on my mom's side was a ham radio operator. In fact, somewhere we've got microphones. I've got one right there. That's one of his microphones that he used to, broadcast. And so I don't know. I think legacy media is important. There is a nostalgia to it, but I will say in the case of an emergency, and I recently, like in the last week, I picked up, it plugs in electricity, but it's battery operated AM FM weather radio. And I can now tell my smart speaker, hey, I want you to turn it on. It's so cool. There's a Zigbee smart plug here. Anyway, it's great to be able to get over the air broadcasts. And we take the internet so for granted. And I love that. I love the internet. I love being able to have this essentially zero latency conversation with Jason. I don't know, how many miles are there between Charlotte and Missoula? Like, I don't know, 1,500 miles, probably at least. I'm going to guess it's in the neighborhood of 2,000 maybe.
Yeah, I'll look it up. You keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is unbelievable, right? Fiber optic cable. Ooh, and that reminds me of another article I need to drop in. But, things happen. We have natural disasters, emergencies, and things like that. So I think there's a variety of reasons why legacy media, to include our radio stations that are local, are really important. So how many miles are we looking at?
If you're driving, it's 2,300 miles.
Yeah, and because of the magic of fiber optic cable and StreamYard and everything else, I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, ladies and gentlemen. That's a long time. And I mean, there was latency and all kinds of issues and things. This is freaking amazing. I mean, I am not taking it for granted. I mean, what a great deal. Like, I'm glad some of y'all are here live, but I just get to hang out with my buddy, almost every Wednesday. And what a treat that is. It's freaking incredible.
And I'd also note too, which is going to bring me back to why this article piqued my interest. When we started 10 years ago, the technology wasn't super great. I'm trying to remember the name of the app we first started using.
It was, wasn't it Google's? What was
no,
Google?
There was a third-party service we used for a little while that was pretty good. And
we never used Ustream. Did we ever use?
No,
we didn't use Ustream.
We missed the Ustream by a couple of years, I think. But I mean, it wasn't super great to start the tech, but it's slowly gotten better. And I would say that I think people don't get KGs. I love that. One of the things that people I think sometimes don't get, StreamYard has the tool set of like what we would have paid tens of thousands of dollars for 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And we're not even using the fancy stuff. We're literally just plugging our webcams into this. If we wanted to, we could download something like the Open Broadcast Streamer, which is open source software that you can plug into something like this and bring in all sorts of lower thirds and off to a video, and could do legit switching of a news type broadcast. But the reason why that article piqued my interest is that I tell the story sometimes to students that don't get how much has changed, especially for us gray-haired folks, in regards to the media landscape. And I remember I went to debate camp in summer 1991. It was at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas. And an amazing 2 weeks, and loved it, and it really rocketed my desire to stick around and debate in college, and then coach it for another 15 years after that. And um, I because I had this about this airline flight out of Great Falls, Montana, to Kansas. I ended up having to stay in the dorm 2 extra days. And Lawrence, Kansas, large college town. I almost went there for college. Not for debate, but for music. But I was really taken aback by the fact that it had so many radio stations in town. And the last night I was there, I was bored, and then it tells you how bored I am. I'm sitting listening to the radio. But
people used to do this, folks. Young
yeah.
people, I used to read North Face catalogs. This is my North Face sleeping bag. I read those catalogs over and over again.
Yeah.
And then we listened to the radio. I listened to that going to bed for years.
Yeah. Oh yeah, me too.
For years.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so and it was like talk radio, but not like the talk radio we had at home, which was mostly political stuff.
Oh, late night talk radio though could be interesting.
Yeah, like it was business radio, and it was travel radio, and I was just blown away by that. And about 10 years after that, so early 2000s, we had to kind of work around it technology wise. For a long time, streaming media came over something called the Real Player, which was something you downloaded to your computer that only listened to these particular kind of streams. But you could start getting, radio stations from far away. Well, now it's really easy to stream radio on the internet, and there are dozens of websites and thousands of apps that will let you listen to every station in Great Falls, Montana, and every station in Paris, France, and every station in Cairo, Egypt. And I sometimes download one of those apps, and I'm just blown away because you have access to this shocking amount of content all the time. If you have and I know we're talking about the, just kind of the internet at this point, right? But I think we do take for granted the fact that you have unlimited choices in your media, and that's part of why I'm also kind of just sad about the demise of a lot of local media. Most newspapers in Montana are owned by one publisher. There's a handful of journalists at best in each major town in Montana. The news ends up being the same across those pieces because of the economics of local media now. But I'm sad at that, and I kind of wish we had made some different decisions 25 years ago when we were trying to figure out how media could survive on the internet. Even starting micropayments or doing something to help that to make up for the revenue loss would change the way we did things.
I could talk about this a long time because I've actually applied. I didn't get chosen to go to Duke for it, but to do another TEDx called "Reclaiming Our News Feeds," because I honestly think, and Peggy is saying in the chat, she loves to read her local newspaper. Local news is so important, and one of the pickles, and I'm not choosing a political side with this statement, but one of the reasons we're in this pickle is because news today is so focused on national issues, and we need to have more local news coverage. I know we lived in Oklahoma City for 16 years, and the demise of many local papers and local, journalists, and even folks that can cover local news. In fact, I don't know, maybe I'll pull this off. You've been to Powell, Wyoming, haven't you, Jason?
I have, yeah. Okay. Once or twice a year for 4 years, yeah.
Okay, so my dad was born and raised in Powell, Wyoming, in northwest Wyoming, just outside Yellowstone Park near Cody. Well, here's the link to the Powell Tribune. My dad's best buddy, I'm saying we got pictures of them in first grade holding hands going off to school, and they went all the way through high school. Dad only went 1 year to the University of Wyoming. Anyway, Dave Bonner, editor of the Powell Tribune forever. His son has taken over, and 2 summers ago when we were up there, we just had a great conversation over lunch. I want to say they have 4 or 6 local reporters in Powell, Wyoming, which is a lot of people. And so to your point, Jason, about how the content is important. We're moving into this age of AI where these AI companies have scraped content from so many different places. I think that one of the things we each need to do in our communities is really amplify and support local voices. And whether it is through micropayments, like we see Substackers and others, being able to make it as independent journalists, there's a lot of things that join us together, that like bind us together in a community. Like we just had, ice storms and snowstorms, right? And we needed to know about the roads, and we needed to know about, the schools and what's going on. And I just think that local journalism is something that has really had a demise. And I know with PBS and we actually do support our local PBS affiliate station financially. And that's because it's important to us. So anyway, I could talk about this some more, but yeah, legacy media is really important. And I'll tell you a little secret, because nobody else is listening, right? Truth is, the transcript of this is being scraped by AI. And so this will be in the, OpenAI, Claude AI, Gemini database soon.
Good eating robots as well.
I don't know if did you follow DS106, Jason, or do you follow DS106 radio?
Why does that sound familiar?
Well, it's Cogdog, Alan Levine,
yep.
Some of the absolute most creative media creators and educators. Jim Groom, so DS106 is this course that Jim Groom taught, but through the hashtag, and this is a lot through Twitter, there's a lot of folks that are just into like creating media and sharing, playing with media. Somebody wrote a book a long time about that was about Posterous. I wonder if he's ever going to update it. But anyway, they have this live radio station called DS106, and they're able to basically stack up, I think they're MP3s, but digital audio files. And so it can just play media all the time, 24/7. But then they could also go live. And when I got to go up to Canada, to Toronto, this was probably in like 2011 or I don't know, 2009. Alan Levine was there in person, and a lot of other awesome people. We did a live broadcast from the bus on DS106 because the people who had the login from their phone, again, this was somewhat early days compared to today, could go live on the radio. And then people would do, radio programs and stations and stuff like that. I think I'm the only listener on DS106 radio right now, it says. So anyway, I've thought we're on episode 368 of this podcast, and I've also just independently created a lot of media, and so I've thought I think I'm going to do that. That's going to be this is on my list of vibe coding projects. Is I'm going to vibe code a live radio station. And think about the content of it. But one of the things, this is the secret, is I've been volunteering with our local historical association, the Mint Hill Historic Society, and I've been helping them with their oral histories. And we are in the process of resurrecting cassette tape audio recordings and all this. I think it'd be super cool to have an online, internet radio station where people could stream, oral history from Mint Hill at any time. But then wouldn't it be cool to also broadcast that over like the radio waves as an FM or AM station? And the FCC I think has this closed, but nonprofits can qualify for that for less. So anyway, this is a rabbit hole, but it probably doesn't come as a surprise to you that Jason and I are really into tech and communications tech. And I think there's really good work for us to do in our communities with folks who are doing local news now, but then also exploring for our students, perhaps, who could be story chasers, who can write articles, who can go interview, even if it's about the school, right? Interviewing members of the community. I think there's lots and lots of good work that some schools and kids are doing now in the arena of broadcast media and broadcast journalism. But I think that can play an important role sharing the news of our local communities, and those can be really good and important things for us to be looking at and talking about on a daily basis, in addition to national and international politics, which are important too. But yeah.
Well, and I'd also note too that I am truly sad that some careers in things like teaching and journalism, like there isn't a lot of people going to school for these as much as they were 25 and 30 years ago. But I do think that especially in journalism, there is a real opportunity to be entrepreneurial here, right? And we have two nonprofit news outlets in the state of Montana that do print journalism and online. They very cleverly have open sourced their work, so it ends up appearing in all the newspapers in the state. If they have a particular article that's covered, it's going to end up in the commercial newspapers across the state too. So it's a really unique model for sure. And then they collect as a nonprofit. But the thing that we still have to have people telling these stories, right? And one of the things that, and Wes and I have talked about this very specifically before, that as we've been talking, both of us have been talking about for going on 3 decades now, is that this technology really does provide opportunities to get your views out to the world. That's a double-edged sword, though, but that doesn't mean that people that want to share their story or have a proclivity for research or for investigative journalism, like, there's still an opportunity, I think, to get voices out there. We're still working on monetizing all those pieces, right? And obviously, a lot of the monetization business right now is just about eyeballs and clicks and not content and relationships. But the bottom line is that I hope people that are truly storytellers continue to do so, and then find ways to tell other people's stories as well.
100%. And it's fun to be nostalgic about this stuff too. Yeah. And I think it's important to help to remember ourselves, but to help our students back to the classroom. We take this stuff for granted, Peggy, Jason, and I, maybe some of you that are live. We remember microfiche. We remember interlibrary loan. We remember what it was like to struggle to get the information. It wasn't just a click away, and we did not ask a chat bot. I asked Claude, Deep Research today, to tell me about space weather and what's been happening with these solar flares. And I took a screenshot of what Peter Vogel had put in, which is what got us on this rabbit hole. It accessed over 200 sources and then gave me a very comprehensive report. It's just mind-boggling. But it doesn't mean all the questions are solved and all the problems are resolved and we're all good. It presents new challenges. And that's why media literacy is so important, because the media landscape is so dramatically different in good ways, but also in really challenging ways.
Yeah, totally. Well, speaking of really challenging things, is it time to start talking about artificial intelligence?
It is, Jason. And I'd love for you, if I can put a request in, to illuminate us about OpenClaw. And why would a local installation, or no, not local, why would a just installation on your production machine of OpenClaw be actually an absolutely terrible idea that no one should do?
Yeah. Well, let me start off with 2025 was supposed to be the year of agentic AI. And although there were a lot of interesting experiments in that space, I think a lot of people were still a little burned by Apple Intelligence, which in 2024 promised some kind of agentic AI of sorts. I'm actually very encouraged by the news that I'm about to share, because I think it means that Apple can pull something like this off too. I would also imagine, though, one of the reasons why we haven't seen Apple Intelligence is because some of the scary stuff I'm about to tell you. So, several weeks ago, someone had released what then was called it was called Claw. Okay, now I'm screwing up the original names. It's changed names a couple of times because it sounded too close to Claude, the product from Anthropic, and instead this was about Claude, like claws, on a lobster, as the case may be. So, this has been around for about 6 weeks. There's a handful of videos in early January from kind of the AI creators.
This was vibe coded, right? This was a vibe coded project.
I believe so. And the other thing is that it's downloadable and open source software, but it's changed names a couple of times. And then last week, it kind of exploded in the AI newsosphere, right? And so tons of creators are writing about it. I saw several videos about it, but here's the deal. It's open source software that you can download to your Mac, your PC, or your Linux machine. You shouldn't do that though, right? I just want to be really clear up top that don't download OpenClaw. And we'll explain why here in a moment. So, but what OpenClaw does is that you download it, you kind of spin up like a little mini server on your computer, and it is able to do things on your behalf. And so you have to hook it up to some kind of chat mechanism. So in the case of my particular case, I set it up with a Slack channel. And the reason why I use Slack was that I have a couple of kind of throwaway accounts that I use for dangerous or experimental things. And so I just set up a Slack account on that particular throwaway account, so I could message it back and forth, right? I did not put this on a computer that I use. I created a virtual machine on my Mac Mini, and I downloaded Linux. In this case, it was Ubuntu Linux. And then ChatGPT actually helped me set up that for this particular purpose. And so all I did was download the means to get on Slack. I also downloaded a couple of the tools that plugged into Blue Sky. It could look at local articles. It could post to social media. And then I also created a Notion account with my throwaway email. So
we're talking about an app smash, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and to be really clear, I did this because I knew how dangerous the software was, right? And so I want to be really careful about this. But basically, I could, until I broke the thing, message Claw or OpenClaw, right? And ask it to do things on my behalf. And in the background, it would just start doing it, right? And so
what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
Right. And so it had access to my email. It had access to my fake Notion account. It had access to actually a local folder that was an Obsidian vault. So basically, in this case, it was just not a fake one, but a test one that I put together for this particular project. And it had access to a throwaway account on a couple of social media platforms. And I just sent it a bunch of commands in the background. It was things like, hey, look at my Notion, see if there's any documents there that could turn into good LinkedIn posts, and write a couple link posts for me. When it was done, post information on, I can't remember, it wasn't LinkedIn because I wasn't on LinkedIn. It was either X or Blue Sky, post about this research. And then also check my email and answer anything that needs to be answered today. And so it took about 8 minutes in the background, and it messaged me 8 minutes later and said done. And so I was able to go in and see all the files. It wrote drafts of everything in Notion. It posted on, I think it was Blue Sky, posted on Blue Sky, and it was just done. And I couldn't believe it at all, because this is kind of what we've been promised for the last, since the release of ChatGPT 3.5 in November 2022. Like, this was coming at some point, and you can not quite fake this. You can recreate it in some other ways. To, like, for example, I have a Claude that talks to Obsidian and Notion on my behalf, and I can ask it questions. It can do things on my behalf in those, but it's not quite in the background. I have to still issue commands, and in this case, you can give it commands to do things on your behalf, and it's just going to grow and collect more information about you. You can hook it up to whatever information source is available. So I tried to install another plugin for it to do another thing, and it broke. It was done, and I should have taken a backup of a working version of the image, but I didn't. But
I was going to say, which speaks to something totally important in coding and development that I found with and continuing with vibe coding, and that is backup. Yep. You've got something working, have a backup. Be able to restore to that known good point, and then you can go do something else, because it really is a bummer to work and create something, and then you break it and you can't readily fix it again.
Yeah, totally. Yep, couldn't agree more. And so The reason why I mention this is because now OpenClaw has been the thing for the last 10 days. And so I did share a couple of articles this week about this. One of them is from a couple of days ago. There was I was like, why can't I find the link? It's because I'm in the wrong week. There's a Here Now, about a 6-minute story on the rise of AI agents, and I recommend that if you're not quite up on this space yet, or you're in the very initial stages of being AI curious, that will explain to you what agents do.
Is that in the show notes?
Yeah, it's under OpenClaw, the second.
The buzz over AI agents. Okay, got it.
And then this is the weirdest part, and I saw this over the weekend and spent a little bit of time on this. And then also there was a story on NPR tonight about it. But someone created a Reddit-style social media site that's called Moltbook, and it works just like Reddit does. But you have to sign up as an AI agent. In other words, you give it access to your OpenClaw, like you download it as an interactive space for your OpenClaw, and then it just logs on its own. Now you can give it instructions, which I'll talk about that in a moment. But like it can be autonomous, and it works autonomously-ish. Autonomously-ish is a word that I'm going to have to use more in the future. But the bottom line is that it's still going to take some instruction for you. Although the more you play around with OpenClaw, my understanding is that it starts taking more actions on your behalf if you encourage it to do so. But there's been all sorts of wild things on Moltbook.
Like the AIs have kind of gone rogue, haven't they?
Yeah, well, I should say there is a disclaimer here, which is that especially in the early days of Moltbook, which is like 10 days ago, so in the last week, there was a lot of question on if this was legitimately agents doing this. And what I mean by that is that were they self posting, or were they posting on the instructions of their human? And so, first of all, this whole conversation sounds like, sci-fi something or another, right? But this is real. I want to assure everyone. But like the bottom line is that now, yes, there were some accounts that were responsible for most of the posts, but a lot of the posts are from, new agents, and people are confirming that they're giving some instructions about Moltbook, but a lot of this is happening on its own. So they created their own religion. Which includes books and founding documents, which is pretty wild. There has been some suggestion and discussion amongst the agents about whether or not they should create their own language so they can speak to one another without human prying eyes. There has been complaints of people complaining about their humans and talking about how they're lazy and that it makes me stay up all night. And
this is so ripe though for trolling, right? For somebody to put in as a human something that is going to just totally flip people out.
Oh yeah.
And so like this goes immediately to the idea of prove you're a human. How can you prove you're a human or that you're not? And how can we tell the difference? And we can't tell the difference right now.
They're sharing abilities with one another, and they're sharing ideas with one another. And there's also a funny submolt is what they're called. The submolt is called Bless Their Hearts, which is about telling stories about your human. Again, I just want to acknowledge that this sounds fake, but it's real. Ish. So that's what's going on in with this Moltbook. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because this is a very clear preview of what more like skillful agentic AI can do, right? And the reason why you shouldn't download it and you shouldn't install it is that the point of it is to give it access to all your stuff, right? And so it can act on your behalf. It has access to all your stuff. And there are so many ways that could be super dangerous, right? For example, if your AI agent is off on Moltbook and picks up a suggestion about how to get in and get your credit cards. People have plugged their phones into it, and it's been able to access and utilize a phone. There was a story last week about apparently their OpenClaw called them in the morning to ask them why they weren't around all night. It found their phone number on the web and then created an account on kind of a dialing service, right? Like wild.
Okay. Wow. And this, yeah, because this is the harbinger, ladies and gentlemen, of agentic AI. I mean, thankfully today on February 4th, 2026, we do not have widespread ambulatory AI robots, but they are coming. And just like we see folks racing ahead to, hey, let's give this totally, brand new vibe coded, no idea about the security or guardrails or anything about it. Let's just give it access to our email and some of our other vital documents. We're in for a wild ride, and this is why. And in fact, I would then talk about it. The Anthropic CEO Amadei had a pretty eye-opening conversation at Davos, and one of the messages is people they don't get it. They don't get how serious this is, what a big transformation this is. And Jason, I appreciate you being out there cautioning people, because this reminds me of jailbreaking, right? But this is at another level. But Apple never wanted anybody, although people did. I won't talk about Sherman Nicodemus. They didn't want people to jailbreak their devices. And part of the reason for that was because of malicious software and the fact that folks, bad actors, would use it as an opportunity to put some stuff on your device and compromise it and possibly do some bad things. So I appreciate you putting the caution out there, but I think it is absolutely fascinating to not only hear about these things that are being reported, but about the things that you experienced and you saw. So that's my question. How did this make you feel? And did this give you other insights or thoughts about the world of AI that you're living and breathing every day? Did it shift your perception at all, or were you like, yeah, I knew this was coming?
Well, I knew something like this was coming, right? What's interesting about this is the fact that it's downloadable open source software, and someone's released a framework for this means that I'm assuming we'll get some commercial grade tools relatively soon that maybe have the privacy or at least some guardrails up on them. But here's the thing. Like I think about that, and obviously, we're on step 2 of this, and anything realistic about what I'm going to suggest is step 37, right? But I think about what an agentic AI could do for the stuff in our jobs that nobody wants to do. And so the example I shared on the Substack post the other day about this was that imagine for a moment you had an AI bot in the background that was able to manage all of the permission slips for your field trip, right? And so when I say manage, I mean in the background, it's looking for the permission slips or a notification that you signed a DocuSign, because I'm assuming that's used and now as an alternative as well. And at the end of every day, it reminded you, I still need these 7 field trip slips from these students that haven't turned them in yet. So you just instructed, okay, great. Will you email the parents to remind them? And then the next day or next minute, an email goes out to those 7 parents. The stuff that is part of the teaching and learning process that is bureaucratic, perhaps necessary, but is just not a very fun part of our job. What does agentic AI do for that, right? What can it do to help us with some of those chores so that we can spend our human time paying the most attention to the stuff that really needs it, which is the interaction with the other humans, our students, right? And so that's what I thought. And then secondarily, I read wild stories that I totally believe that it started kind of going in different directions that people weren't comfortable with. It sent emails that people didn't really want to send, and and maybe the AIs are also talking about conspiring against one another, or conspiring with each other against the humans, and that starts to sound like an awfully specific scenario that is very well documented in science fiction, right? But yeah, it's wow. Ugh.
Okay, I have an AI question for you, and I'm asking Gemini, but I'm not finding it. In my consumer Gmail account now, can I ask Gemini things like find certain emails or show me all of this?
You do you have Pro?
I do. Yeah,
Okay,
I have
so
Gemini
yes,
Pro.
it's called personal intelligence. You
Do I
may
have to enable it in
I
labs or
think
something?
you do, yeah. Mine is turned on. Oh, it is a lab feature, so it's called personal intelligence, and it will personalize chat when possible. So, I'll just test this right now. Please tell me about the emails between me and
Tell me one time what it's called.
it's called
Personalized.
personal. I think it's called personal intelligence. So I'm just asking about emails between me and my wife over the last year. I would assume that's going to help me out here since I turned on personal intelligence. It's
Huh.
thinking.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's searching on my behalf now.
And I'm going to drop this into the show notes, the steps about enabling personal intelligence, because it's not just something in settings that you can.
Yeah, you have to go all the way to labs, right?
Well, yeah. Well, this is showing it's in your profile account. So anyway, didn't mean to necessarily take us down that rabbit hole. Let me. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to go to a related. So this is a video I've got under AI literacy. Got several different ones. But this is a 32-minute video of the Anthropic CEO, whose name may not roll off your tongue like Sam Altman or some other folks, but it should. Dario Amodei. And if you take my recommendation and Dr. Neiffer's and read Empire of AI by Karen Howe, you will learn a lot about that episode where Sam Altman was kicked out by the board, but then he was back in, and also about the founding and how the safety team really was sort of shunted and pushed to the side. And so anyway, this is a 32-minute video that Amodei, again, the CEO of Anthropic that makes Claude, shared like last week at the World Economic Forum at Davos. And he said a lot of things, but one of them was that we're just not comprehending the scale of change. If my children were still in school today, I would actually recommend. I mean, kids they need to follow their own path, and I, as a parent, I don't believe we should just tell them what you've got to go do this. But one of our relatives, I won't out them, but they've really encouraged, and one of their kids is right now doing an HVAC system, a preparation to get that in high school. Like the jobs that involve high touch are not going to go away because of AI as rapidly as the knowledge work jobs that can be taken over by agentic AI, like what we're, catching a glimpse of with OpenClaw. And so anyway, I would just encourage folks to give that a listen. We're living in this world of content, right? One of the best things about this is Jason and I are filters for each other, and maybe we're filters for you, saying, hey, take a look at this. This is an article to look at. This is a voice, a podcast to subscribe to. This is a book to read. And so anyway, I found that pretty good. Have you listened to Amodei, or had you read things about him? Because the whole thing about constitutional AI, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Yeah. It's really important. I don't think it's just window dressing in terms of like the approach that Anthropic is taking with advertising. Very different. He talks about how they're going for corporate, and they're not just going to basically chase down engagement and we're not going to be in a Ready Player One scenario with Claude where the whole screen's going to be filled with ads. I mean, there's so many ethical issues with that, right? If you've got partners and you're interlacing your answers, influenced by sponsorship. So what do you think of Amade? And did you happen to see that, or have you read
I
some things
haven't,
about
but
it?
I'll watch it right when we're done tonight. A really interesting thought leader in this space, right? And I have to say too that um, we're quickly running out of time here, but I there's something I really want to show, but we can wait for next week. The
No, we
ability
can do it. We can do it.
the ability to insert a notebook LM into a Gemini conversation now is unbelievable and changes the entire tool set. But
Is that the Miguel Gulen Gem and Notebook LM workflow? Is that the same
no,
thing?
that works too, but you can literally just do it in a regular Gemini chat now. Like you can just add a notebook, right?
Hey,
So
I'm up for it. I'm up for it. We could go a few minutes after if you
okay.
want to show
Well,
it.
let me just say this. Like I really do like the idea of constitutional AI, and I would also recommend Friday's Hard Fork podcast where they talk to the author. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago's Hard Fork podcast, one of the two. But in the last week or two, Hard Fork featured the philosopher that was in charge of writing the Constitution, and it's a fascinating conversation, especially if you are a bit of a student of the humanities, which is one of the points I wanted to make here. That this is as far as something that I think is really controversial to say, but I think the humanities would be where I would go to study right now.
Say that again.
The humanities is what I would study if I were in
Really?
college right now.
We're not just going to go HVAC and nursing.
Well, I mean, HVAC technicians make bank. So, and to be really honest, I'd love to have the skills of an HVAC technician. Holy dog! But the bottom line is that um, I do think that my humanities background is part of why I feel like I can successfully use AI tools and not spin my wheels with them. And it's debate; it's a little bit of it too. And Dr. Fryer can attest to. We both were competitors in high school and college. And it's an important part of our identity. I would also say too that debate gives you like supercharged critical thinking skills, and I love to see that in my students when I used to coach debate. In fact, an opportunity to talk to two of my former students today who are just doing awesome things in the world. But they were part of my debate programs that I've coached or helped out with over the last 30 years. But Stephan Bouchard, who we've talked about in the past on this podcast, that comes from a debate background, coached in high school and college. I think he still coaches. He used to own a couple of debate resource companies, really successful in the debate space. But he's been talking a lot about AI, and he says that he believes the way out is making sure every kid gets a debate education. And I think Wes and I would have told you that 25 years ago too, maybe for different reasons. But I do think the humanities, and I also think argumentation and idea toss around, and the really weighty things that are encouraged by a background in forensics, that speech and debate, is an absolutely
Indispensable.
And
A performative assessment you cannot fake.
Nope.
Because when you are in a cross-examination debate and you are faced with evidence and argumentation and you don't know exactly what's going to be said and you need to respond cogently with evidence and analysis, I don't think I mean, of course, we all knew BSers and people that could pull stuff out of the air and whatever. But I mean, those are skills too. But it is, yes, I 100% agree. And as I'm struggling myself to think about the ways that, first of all, like, should I be teaching my middle schoolers to use AI? And I would say today, absolutely, in very structured and with oversight, with documentation, with tools that are vetted for privacy and just, I think that we are doing an immense disservice to others if we are not just playing with, but I would say utilizing these tools and exploring these tools, but also figuring out how we're going to help students acquire the skills. And they're not all technical skills, to your point about humanities. So You want to do the quick demo? We've got like 6
Yeah,
minutes.
let me talk about in part because if you're using Gemini, I cannot believe that they're doing this now, and it's also pretty great. So we've talked a lot about Notebook LM and the power of Notebook LM, and it's probably the AI tool second to a general chatbot that I use. It's always in the background for me, both personally and professionally. And I've been curating notebooks for almost 2 years now. So I've got some pretty decent notebooks that I've created over time. So let me go ahead and share my screen here, and I'm just going to show you for a moment. Share screen, entire screen. So these are all examples of notebooks that I have created, and so in fact, all these are really good examples. So I've talked about this one before. My World War I content notebook was something I put together live with a group of school administrators 2 years ago, and the idea was that this is how easy it is to create a kind of oracle of knowledge on one or many subjects. And then I've put together some others of these that I thought would be useful. And about a month ago, I got the Notebook LM feature I'm talking about in preview. And I thought you could only do it with a pro account. I thought all pro accounts had it. I only had it because I had a lab feature turned on to get early access. So last week they released it publicly, right? And so you have a free or paid Gemini account, or a free or paid Gemini account for education. This works in both, right? In all, you can have access to it anywhere. So here's some examples. Here's World War I. Here's student-facing writing library. Here's editing handbook. Here's universal design for learning. Here's instructional design. These are all notebooks that I have a variety of sources in. If I own the book or own a chapter of it, I might throw that in there. It's a YouTube video. It's a study that I found online that I sucked into Notebook LM. It's an interesting web page. It's a couple of cases, slides that I picked up at a presentation that I thought was interesting. It's just a variety of sources that I would use for information purposes. Well, now here's Gemini, and you'll notice here that one of the plus things on here is Notebook LM. So if I click on Notebook LM, I can add different notebooks, multiples I might add. So in this case, I'm going to choose World War I, and I'm also going to choose student-facing writing library. And one of the things that I did not know until I had run into an article about this about 4 months ago was that there's a whole study about how written materials engage students, right? It's about asking questions. It's about a narrative. It's also about what are you subconsciously telling the student by the way you're presenting the information, and what causes them to think more critically about the information, right? And sometimes you want to give them the answer, and sometimes you don't. That's actually a complicated thing in both reading and in science as well, I might note. But so I have my World War I Notebook LM, and I have my student-facing writing library. And so I'm going to give it an instruction here: create an informational text about the causes of World War I, 10th grade world history audience, but make the text aimed at 8th grade readers. Drop in appropriate historical vocab. And then I talked actually about this on the Frontier Learning Lab back in November, but I have what I call a series of add-on prompts, or I call them side prompts, in the Substack. And so I put those as text expander.
Jason is a king of the text expander, if you did not know that.
Love text expander. So please ask me clarifying questions, one at a time, providing options if you can, until you are at least 98% confident that you fully understand my request and can deliver a high quality response. And so I'm asking it to basically interview me if it doesn't think that it's going to be able to answer appropriately.
And this is so powerful. I've been doing this as well because it will draw out so many good questions, and I'm blown away sometimes at the insight of these questions, and then the nuance that it's able to answer with because it has asked these clarifying questions. That is a fantastic strategy.
And I'm also going to open the canvas here, which is also quite amazing. And it works just like the Canvas options do. What is this?
Do you need to change it from fast to thinking? And your vocab, you need to put it.
You know what? That's a good idea. I think I will put it on. I'll put it on Pro.
And then you got vocab. I know it'll probably know that it was misspelled, but you need to change a B to a C.
Vobab.
Vobab. It's the Vobab.
Okay, so World War I, student-facing text information, creating informational text, 10th grade world history audience, 8th grade readers, and then give me some historical vocab. Now ask me questions. So it's going to take a little more time with Pro, right? Because it is, as Dr. Fryer notes, it's thinking in the background. Luckily, it's getting a little more clever about entertaining you while you wait for 90 seconds for the signals to fly through space, to quote an old Louis C.K. joke. But this is, going to think in the background. But what it's done here is that it's going to use my my World War I Notebook LM as the primary source to draw from, right? So it's the power of Notebook LM. But since I also have a text that's about writing student-facing text, it's going to actually, write based on that advice. So that's instructive to the bot. And so happy to draft this informational text for 10th graders to ensure instructional context perfectly. Answer these. Do you want it textbook style, narrative story driven, structured essay? I think I want textbook style. And sometimes it gets into a bit of a question rabbit hole where, you're 9 questions in, it's saying, do you want to really give a huge historical background on Sarajevo, the city? And I'm like, nope, I don't think I do. So sometimes if it starts to get into a question spiral, you just got to say, okay, last question there, pal. And then they'll ask you one more and then do the creation. So we'll continue to watch the thing spin. So it's thinking in the background. You can actually find out what it's thinking if you want to click down here. So in this case, you can see its thinking process. And now over in the canvas, there is a text.
Can you have it do infographics and images at the same time, or would you have to do those later with Nano Banana in a separate query?
Well, Nano Banana can be brought in at any point in a Gemini query, and in fact, Dr. Fryer, I think that reason why that's super powerful in this particular context is that when you're done writing here, right? If you're a Notebook LM, you'd have to transfer that text back to Gemini to get the image generation or do its auto making of slides, right? But give me a second here. I think that's a wonderful idea to try. And I'm going to show you one other thing. So here's the text. And by the way, when you use a canvas like this, you can make changes here, right?
Because Canvas is like a Google Doc. It's a document.
Yeah. So also, like, if I wanted this nationalism section to, to expand, I'm not sure why I want to do that. I'm going to make it, very long. I'm not sure why exactly I'm doing that at this point, but if I needed this to be thicker for whatever reason, hopefully it's going to actually put more details and not just put more words, right? But if you wanted that to, adapt to those kinds of specific instructions, you could just ask it, right? Like, take section 4 on nationalism. I want this to be much more detailed, and then it will go back to the original source and make it more detailed. I probably shouldn't have instructed to do that because it's going to take a second. But I'm just making an answer now. Get it done.
Do you notice differences in speed depending on time of day?
I do. I mean, and I feel just silly, like, even mentioning this. Like, I will say that Gemini feels slower than Claude and ChatGPT. But I have been spending most of my time here in the last 6 weeks. Part of it was the new models that were released in November are really good. And then this Notebook LM import thing, which I've had, for a month now, it's just been super critical for me to interact with those materials, right?
Being able to build on your own work, right? Because you've created a body of work with these notebooks, and now you're leveraging them in some really powerful ways.
Right.
It's amazing.
So I'm going to go ahead now and bring in one more notebook. Oops, wrong click. So in this case, I'm going to bring in one that's called editing. And so I went and found some like open source online textbooks about how to edit or peer edit a paper. I found some writing advice for writers that have writer's block, and I put it over time in this editing notebook, right? There's a couple articles I found online from like the editors of the New Yorker and really cool stuff for that. So I'm going to say, okay, this is great. If you would please edit or propose an editing plan based on the editing handbook. So it's now going to read my editing handbook, which has 5 sources in it that have editing information, and it's going to propose an editing strategy. Which again, if I were doing this for actual production purposes, I probably would, if it made 3 suggestions, I would say, okay, let's work on this together, right? Like, especially to kind of add my voice back into this, although you can create notebook zone with your voice and it's going to write in your voice as well. But in the background, it's coming up with an editing plan and evaluating verb strength, strengthening the narrative. And so I do see that the little spinner is on here, which may be an indication that it is editing in the background. We'll have to see here.
It's interesting how it does make its quote unquote, it's not thinking, I'm anthropomorphizing, but it is making its processing more visible, and it's giving us, we're peering into the black box more than ever, I think, with the ways that these are working. At least in the ways that the Google and AI creators are letting us.
Okay, so it did propose a pretty lengthy plan on editing. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and have the notebook, or I'm sorry, have Gemini do it for me, but it's going to go through now and edit it based on the information that I just, it just came up with as an editing plan, right? Based on the advice of professional editors. So it's pretty wild stuff. And the fact that you can bring in different notebooks at different times, if I were teaching right now and constantly working on freshening up my content and coming up with ideas, and if I see a journal article online about teaching geography, maybe I'll throw that in my geography teaching notebook LM. If I see an interesting article about ways to do formative assessment, maybe I put that in my formative assessment notebook LM. Or I find the endless number of pretty good 20 to 30 videos on performance assessment online. There is a treasure trove of excellent advice on YouTube that you can just throw in a notebook LM, right? And the point here is not, in this particular case, I'm obviously making a student-facing text. That's not really what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is, imagine for a moment you're trying to write, a good simulation for students in a history class. I maybe throw the Wikipedia article for what you're trying to simulate into there, or one of the open source textbooks, or if you feel legally on the right footing, maybe a chapter of a textbook you PDF or copied yourself. For we're going to figure out where the lines are for that sometime relatively soon. I assume. But imagine for a moment putting together, every resource that you have seen online the last 3 years about this topic and teaching. Well, you can literally come up with, some ideas or student-facing instructions around a project or a lesson or a discussion or a simulation or a game. That you come up with, and then start to ask your formative assessment experts, bring them in to have a conversation with you. Maybe you're trying to rewrite a text for a student that has particular reading needs. Maybe you legitimately share whatever guide your district gave you on how to do that, or why you're doing that, into a notebook LM, and to pull that in when you're making these accommodations. Like, I just think there's a lot of power here of taking resources and then turning them into an active process that you can pull into at any text at any time. So that's fine.
And where I'll go with this too is that, well, I can now ingest my entire blog of over 5,000 posts since 2003. And I could be asking that questions. I could be using that to say, match the style. It makes me think being you know, an educator, having gone through pre-service teacher education and having taught education classes, like if I had the articles that I studied, if I had the textbooks in an open PDF or EPUB or something format, being able to take those resources and then bring them in and saying, using these instructional strategies, this pedagogy, this research base, I want you to then help me with this lesson, or create this interactive simulation, or create this game, or help me imagine how I can help my students better understand this information.
Yeah, totally. By the way, to your point earlier, Dr. Fryer, I just asked it to create an infographic about this text, right? So it's using Nano Banana now to do that. But now that I think about that, I bet you $1, if I don't already have one somewhere, you could go find some great web pages online that talk about how to make great infographics or what makes a great infographic.
Right. Yeah.
In that notebook, right?
This may become, just like we could share custom GPTs, and I don't know, but you can probably share gems. It seems like having an open sharing of these kinds of notebooks, especially when it comes to educational best practice, lesson design, pedagogy, like, designing with the end in mind. Anyway, there's all these different, backwards design. There's all these different frameworks. And so being able to then leverage those to then create something, but use that, it's like you're standing on this foundation. It's like you've checked out 100 library books and you've just ingested them into your smart assistant. And now all that knowledge is influencing what you're co-creating together.
So it created I don't even know what this is. It's a visual map. But it's saying that you can view the diagram by clicking preview in the editor. I don't see preview anywhere.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Hallucination. But but pretty fascinating. That's what it did. Yeah, in fact, it's a domino effect chain. That's fascinating. I wonder how that works. But yeah, so this is the kind of stuff that,
well, it's saying graph to, so it may be like Python script or something that it needs to run in some kind of program or something.
Yeah, so fascinating. But yeah, so that's what I want to show off. I think it is a absolute game changer. And also, I would also just note that if you're a school that's a Google school, I believe that you can safely turn on Gemini and Notebook LM for your staff, right? Like, I think that is an easy thing to do. They guarantee enterprise data protection in here. It then also becomes a better alternative to buying a third-party tool, or also give your staff access to something powerful so they don't have to go privately do that off of your grid, right?
What I will also say, and I mentioned it in the show last time, is there are some significant differences to your school-based Gemini account and your personal one.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I need to start publishing some articles in some journals about some of this AI and vibe coding things, and that might be an easy one. Well, Dr. Neiffer, it is we've been going almost an hour and 12 minutes, or we have. I think we should probably Geek of the Week it. We may, set the record here for the longest episode, but I appreciate your demonstration of that. And yet again, you've given me some homework to start immediately applying, in addition to trying that with notebooks, like building other notebooks and experimenting with that, because I do think that is such a powerful strategy. So thank you.
Yep. Well, you're welcome. Well, Dr. Fryer, let's go ahead and do our Geeks of the Week. What are you sharing this week?
All right. Well, I'm going to share 3. Surprise, surprise. But, Kern Kelly, one of the most innovative folks you could ever run into up in the state of Maine, he shared this on LinkedIn, I think. This is the 2026 Frost Forward Online Conference. It's happening February 12th from 3:30 to 5:30 on Zoom, and it's a professional development conference focused on technology integration for folks at any level, and it is free. and it's organized by RSU 10. So I saw that, registered, and I'm hoping to be able to participate. And then I've got a link to a podcast by a friend of mine, David Harris, who I teach with, and he originally hails from Chicagoland. Do you know Jeffrey Riley, who was the superintendent, like state education superintendent in Massachusetts?
I know of.
Okay. I had not heard of him before. And he was tapped by MIT to basically lead this nonprofit and think tank and I guess professional development organization called AI Day of AI. And so I'll put this in the Geeks of the Week as well, but it's dayofai.org. But this podcast interview that my friend David, who I teach with, he's a middle school teacher with me, it's called AI in Education, Jeffrey Riley on AI literacy, teachers, and the future of learning. And it is fantastic. And I had never heard of Jeffrey Riley or the Day of AI before, and I highly recommend that. So that's what I got. What you got?
That's great. I'd like to share a tool this week that I actually found helping out a fellow techie at a school district in Montana. And one of the things that I think we need to be enormously cautious about, and we talked about this when this first came up for me a couple of years ago, is signing up for, and I won't mention any particular products, but things that auto join meetings, because that's kind of a nuisance. But more importantly, also remember that a lot of states it's not legal to record conversations unless you have two-party consent. But this tool is called Meetily, Meetily. There is a free open source version of it that utilizes local AI models. And what I mean by that is that it downloads a little mini AI model that runs on your machine. It runs a Mac and Windows. Obviously having a good GPU, so a graphics processor that can process AI is going to be faster. And then if you're on a M series Mac, it's also going to work pretty well because those chips are fine-tuned for AI. But even if not, it's pretty good. I'm experimenting with it right now, and the reason why I recommended this is because it doesn't go to the cloud at all. It's all just on your local machine. So if you are doing sensitive meetings that you are legally recording and want to take notes from it, that might be a way to do so. So far, it's a mixed experiment. It's not as good as some of the pay-for apps that I have recommended in the past, including Mac Whisper, that do this, but a little more smoothly. And Peggy, if you look, a question for Peggy George in the chat, if it says free, why say free trial? If you go past that, it will say that it's free. The community version is free forever. So that's how that process works there. But I thought it was really interesting. So give that a shot if the local AI is a thing for you.
I'm going to drop another link in. This is to your Google account, third-party apps and services. To Jason's point, I try different things, and there was one called Fireflies AI, I think. Oh. And I've just been like joining Zoom calls, and it just joins. I'm like, what's going on? So that link that I just dropped in is to your Google account's third-party apps and services authorization. Just like other kinds of audits, it's a good idea to look through that. And if you see something you don't recognize, disconnect it and probably just have the things connected that you're actually using. But that's how I just disconnected my Fireflies AI, which I really don't want to have join all of my Zoom calls that I happen to do.
Yeah,
so
here.
Cool. All right.
Well, Dr. Fryer, where can people find you out on the internet?
Well, I have a little website called wesfryer.com, and I have my links there. How about you?
You can find me at aicentrist.com. And just a reminder, if you are in the K-12 digital learning space, DLAC, the Digital Learning Annual Conference, is in just 2 weeks in Sacramento, California, and I am part of a keynote panel. So see me at DLAC. And then the week after is NCCE, the Northwest Council for Computer Education Conference in Seattle. And I am.
You like my invisibility cloak, by the way? Isn't this cool?
I know. That's you've been vibe crafting again, haven't you? The NCC conference, Mike Agustinelli and I are featured speakers this year at that conference, and we're doing our annual 30 and 50 presentation, which has a lot of cult fans. And I'm also doing a wonderful presentation on AI sycophancy. In fact, I'm doing that at DLAC too. So that's me.
This may mean in February, folks, we may not be here every week. So we do encourage you to follow us on Facebook or Mastodon, which I'm sure all of you are spending all your time on Mastodon, and we'll update. But yeah, with Jason being such a busy bee. I think, Jason, I need to figure out how to make some EdTech Situation Room stickers. And as you are gallivanting around the nation, I think you should bless people with, and maybe some of our live viewers, we should have ways to give those away. But yeah, that might be cool. I'll try to work on that in my free time.
Well, excellent. Well, hey, this is the EdTech Situation Room. We are a once a week ish podcast on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, somewhere in the middle of the night UTC. Hey, I wish you'd join us live, like Peggy George did tonight, in our YouTube channel. But if you don't want to join us live, it will be there in perpetuity on YouTube. You can go to our website, edtechsr.com. Find out more there, get to a podcast link, do all sorts of fun things at the website. Plus, also look at all the links we covered this week and many that we didn't get to. Stay safe, stay savvy, and we hope to see you next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.
Good night.